that's it. I'm Shannon Rosaire. I'm the Senior Customer Success Manager on the Build team. So I am one of the people that knows all things Build. So we are just going to hop right into things right now. Okay. Let's see. Perfect. Okay. Can you all see my screen? Okay. Awesome. Let's see. Kathleen has not received the email confirmation. I'll have one of my colleagues reach out to you, Kathleen, to make sure you get that email confirmation.
I'll take care of that.
Thanks, Tad. Okay. When you log into Build for the first time, you will see this screen. Now, yours might look a little different as you log in because you probably don't have any apps. You may have one or two in the sandbox instance that has been created for you. I am in my own sandbox, so that's why it's a little different. If you are joining me tomorrow for part 2, you can get a new sandbox if you want, but I recommend keeping this one because what we're going to cover today will continue on tomorrow. So everything just builds on each other. You can see that when you log in, you've got a space for your applications. Quick vocab check. Application in Build is a form and a workflow combined. And it's also the data that is submitted through that form. So that is considered an app. So you can see the apps that I've created, and then you can also see the apps below that have been shared with me. And my permissions or my access to those apps that have been shared with me are based on the permissions that were set by that particular app administrator. Things that are important to note from this page. Up at the top center, you can see that I have an action list. The action list will show you your assignments that you have not yet completed. So you can see here on my action requested over on the right, I've got several that are form fills. This means that I've started a form, I've initiated a form, but I haven't finished it. So I need to go in and submit that form. You can also see I have some approvals. Whoops, did not mean to click on that, but I've got some approvals. So I need to go in and approve some forms. And then I also have an acknowledge. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but those are some actions that are requested of me that I have not yet finished. Also from the home screen, so if you ever need to jump back to home, this is the home right here. Also from the home screen, you'll notice at the top right, we have this What's New section. I cannot emphasize the What's New section enough. On the Build team, we have a continuous development strategy. So we're constantly developing new features and pushing them out into your instances that really just truly make your experience better. We'll notify you of those changes in the What's New section. Any big changes that may impact what you're doing or what's live will be pushed out, or we will notify you in advance. So we'll tell you in multiple ways when big changes are coming that could really impact you. But What's New is a good way to just get a quick glimpse, as well as link to the documentation as to what's happening. Angela's question, can we share our sandbox with anyone or actually send a form for approvals as a test? You can share your form as an approval for a test. Oh, and Tad's just answering that. This will expire at the end of April, as Tad mentioned. So just be aware of that, but this is just a short time period. So thanks, Tad, for answering that. We answered it at the same time. Also from this screen, if you go up to the top left where you see the Kuali Build menu, in your sandbox environment, you are all system administrators. So you will have access to all of the things in the back end of Build. In your live environment of Build, you may or may not be the system administrator. And if that's the case, you may not see all of these things when you're actually in your Build application. But we do this for today just for training purposes so you kind of know what's available. I'm gonna go ahead and start at the bottom. The help menu, when you click on help, it will take you to our knowledge base. And it may take you right to the knowledge base. It may take you to the getting started page, which is here. I just want to highly emphasize, put in a plug for the knowledge base. This is the how-to documents for how to use Build. I've tried to document as much as I can, if not everything in the system. So come here, check it out if you have any questions, and there should be a guide. The search works really well in our support site. So if you're looking for additional information on some of the features we're sharing, that's a good place. The history provides your system administrators an audit log with everything that happened in the system. So it tells them who did what, when, and how. System permissions is where your administrators allow people into the system and give them access to create apps or not. API integrations. I'm not going to get into this too much today. I will demo a few things for you. I'm not going to have you create any integrations just for the time's sake, but I will kind of give you a teaser of what you can do with some of the integrations. I do want to mention that Tad is going to be doing a session tomorrow that's focused on smart gadgets, which go right along with integrations. And then right after this meeting, we're going to be talking about our GraphQL APIs. So those of you that are very, very technical, are used to creating integrations through REST, you may be interested in that session as well. So GraphQL session right after this, and then the smart gadget session tomorrow, we'll dive more into some of those integrations. But like I said, I'll tease that for you here a little bit later. Users and groups area. Users is where you get the users into Build. The groups area is where you create different groups of users, different groups for your forms and workflows. I do want to spend a little bit of time here because it's from the groups that can create some really fun options and automated options when we get to forms and workflow. So I'll try my best to explain. This is a trickier concept. It was harder for me to kind of grasp how it worked when I was first getting into Build. But over here on the left, you'll notice that we have categories. And I did not want to do that. Categories are a way to define or categorize a set of groups. Categorize their categories. So you can see here, I've got a colleges category. All that's really telling me is what kind of groups I have in this category. So in colleges, I've got the business college or the business group, the education college or the education group. So these are my groups within this colleges category. I have a child category of colleges, which is departments. And if I click into that subcategory, you can see the groups that are a part of my departments category. And the groups here, of course, represent departments on campus. So accounting, Asian and Near Eastern languages, biology, things like that. Each of those is a group in Build that's part of that category. Now, categories, at the category level, you can create roles. So you'll see here, I'm still in my departments category, and at the top right, I can view my category, and then I can create some roles, which I've already done. I've got members, department chair, executive committee, so on and so forth. Once I create the roles in that category, they trickle down to the groups in that category where I can then assign them. So if I go back, I can click into, say, my biology group here, and you can see my roles that I just showed you are listed, and we've made some assignments to each of those roles. So Leela Mueller is the department chair, Aaron, Felton, Peyton, etc. are a part of the executive committee, and so on. Now, users can be part of multiple roles. They can be part of multiple roles in multiple groups. So think about faculty members that are part-time in one department and part-time in another department. They can definitely be in two departments. So that's a scenario. One thing that I want to point out here is that a role does not necessarily have to be a one-to-one relationship. So like Leela Mueller is the department chair, one-to-one relationship. A role could also mean a bunch of people. And I'm using bunch carefully so I don't say group too often because I don't want to confuse you, but it could mean multiple people in that particular role. So Aaron is the executive committee in the executive committee role, Felton is in the executive committee role, etc. So later on, when we start getting into forms, and then tomorrow when we dive more into workflows, it's possible for you to set up a workflow that says, I want the department chair to approve this form. Totally fine. One person's going to approve it. But you could also set up approvals to say, I want a committee to approve this form. And you can set up some rules around that committee. Maybe you just want one person from the committee, the first person to approve it is sufficient. Or maybe you want half the committee to approve the form or something like that. So keep that in mind when it comes to roles, is that one or more people could approve some of these submitted forms that come in. Before I jump into the form, we're going to be covering mostly building out the form today. Are there any questions before I move forward? Rodney, are there instances of groups separate from our other apps or that overlap? So are you talking, Rodney, like, for example, I may have a group that is like IT department, or a group that is like university payroll? I see. So a CM customer. So you're talking about, do my groups in CM, are they automatically in Build? Is that your question? Yeah, okay. No, Build and CM are completely separate. The interfaces look the same. They run functionally the same, but Build and CM are separate from each other. Does that answer your question? Okay, you're welcome. Any other questions? Feel free to keep posting. If you're writing something in the chat window, keep posting. I'm just going to navigate away from this page. I'm going to go back, and you'll notice that when I clicked into groups, it opened it up as a separate tab. So I'm just going to click back into my previous tab to get me here to my home page. And from here, we're going to go ahead and create a new app. Now, the example that I'm using for this session, and that I was using in yesterday's session, is let's say a student wants to request a new major. So I'm going to go ahead and create that new app, and we're going to call this Kuali Days Session 2 New Major. You'll notice that I can select an icon from this list of icons just to make it fun, and I can even change the color or even put in a specific color code if you want to match your university. So I'm going to go ahead and create this, and it's going to take me right into the app. Now you'll notice up here at the top right, this is how I navigate throughout the app. The first time I create the app, it takes me directly to the form builder, which is where we're going to spend the majority of our time today. After you come into the app, like second, third, subsequent times, it'll take you directly to the documents page. A quick note about documents. In Build, we call a submitted form a document. So a form prior to submission, a document post submission. So you'll be taken to the documents page, and once you start getting documents, people start submitting forms, you'll see a list of those documents there. And we'll get to that in tomorrow's session in part 2. Okay, so when you come in here, you'll see all of the gadget options over here on the left. You'll see the center panel where you're actually building out the form, and then over on the right is the configuration panel where you'll configure each of the gadgets. The first gadget you'll want to bring in, and I highly recommend doing this, is the section gadget. So it's our top gadget. All you need to do is click on that gadget, drag and drop it in the center panel, and you'll notice the blue area is the drop zone. That's where you're going to drop it. Doesn't make much of a difference now, it's our first gadget, but in a minute you'll see how you'll be able to move some of these gadgets around. Now, I highly recommend putting the rest of your gadgets in a section. A section does a couple of things in your build form. First of all, it makes it look nice. It breaks up your section, or it breaks up your form, and creates some nice borders around things. It does just make it look nice and professional. So that's the first thing. Second thing, sections also allow you to paginate your forms. So if you have a really long form, you can imagine for a user, that's really hard to navigate a long form if they have to scroll for a million years. So you may want to consider breaking your form out into various pages, just so that users can navigate back and forward as they need to throughout the form. Top level sections like the one I have here do that. They can create pages within your form. Another benefit of having sections is you can hide or expose sections on the form based on how a user responds to a question that you ask. So for example, let's say that I have a faculty member who's coming in to coming in for a travel request. I mean, not really a lot of that going on right now with COVID, but let's pretend, go back to the old days, a travel request form. Let's say you're asking, are you traveling domestically or are you traveling internationally? And based on the response to international versus domestic travel, you may have a series of questions pop up that are different for each of those types of travel. Sections will allow you to hide or expose groups of questions based on some of those responses. The other thing that sections do, and I want to show you quickly over here on the right, you'll notice I can add a label to this section, and we'll call this student information. You can also enable what's called our office use only setting. The office use only setting will hide this section from the form submitter. So they will not see this on the form when they're filling it out for the first time. So think about forms that you fill out that are paper-based forms. There's always something at the bottom, usually that's like for HR purposes or for office use only, for administrative use only. That's what we're going for here. The benefit of a digital form, though, is that this office use only section, like I said, is hidden from the submitter, so they don't have to see noise. They just have to see what they need to fill out. I don't want to enable that in this case, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And you'll see some other settings, which we'll dive into some of those here in just a minute. Over on the left, all the basic gadgets, we'll start adding a few. One thing to point out, we've got several text gadgets. The difference between the text gadgets, we've got the short text, which is, think about this as something that requires a few words, few word answers, or maybe a sentence at the most. The long text and the rich text gadgets are the same. They are for paragraph or essay responses. The difference between those gadgets is that rich text, you notice I'll pull that in, allows the user to format somewhat their answers. I'm going to go ahead and remove that gadget for now, but that's just the difference there. I'm going to go ahead and pull in a short text, and let's say that I want my student to type in a student ID. So they can just type in their student ID here. That gives me the information that I need. Now I'm going to kind of skip through some of these basic gadgets. I'll come back to some of them at the end. But if I jump down, I want to focus on the smart gadgets. The smart gadgets do a couple of things. One, they will pull data from the users and groups area that I was showing you a minute ago. So it allows users to select from some of that information. The smart gadgets are also where integrations will show up. So I want to show you a few options that use the users and groups area first, and then we'll jump in. I'll just do a couple, like I said, a demo, a quick tease of the integrations that are available. This gadget here, I'm going to start at the bottom, submitted by. If I pull this in, again, look, notice the drop zone where I'm dropping this. If I pull that submitted by, it will automatically fill out the student's name for them. So I'll put here student name as my gadget label or question. Now I should mention, it will pull in the student's name if they are logged into the system. There are two ways to do forms in Build. One is authenticated forms, which will allow them to use integrations. It will allow them to use some of these, the groups and users information that I'm going to show you in a second. So it allows some pre-population to occur. The second way to do forms is anonymously, meaning a user does not have to sign in, which does limit the types of fields that you can use, but it allows you to send it to whomever you need to. It could be someone, people in the community. It could be anyone who's a student or non-student of the university. So those are just some things to be aware of. In this case, this field, the submitted by, won't populate for an anonymous form. So you wouldn't want to put that on an anonymous form. So they're submitted by. Let's say that I want the student to be able to select from a list of users and choose their advisor. I'll come back to the data lookup single item here in just a minute, but the data lookup list is where we would get that list of users or the list of groups. So I want a student to pick from a list of users who their advisor is. So I'm going to pull this data lookup list in. Now, one more note on the drop zone. I know I've talked about it a couple of times. Notice how right here, my drop zone is a little bit bigger. It's about half of the previous fields. This means that this particular gadget will appear in my section for student information. If I have a tiny drop zone like I have now, it will kick it out of the section and start a new section. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's in my student information section. If you want to double check and make sure it is, you can just click on the section header and you'll notice the blue outline will appear around whatever is in that section. So back in data lookup list, we're going to do advisor here. Oh, if I can spell. I have no idea what I was spelling, but there we go. So advisor, and we're going to choose a data source. And from here, I've got two options. I can choose Kuali data or I can choose external data. Kuali data is the users and groups area. External data is an integration. For our purposes here, we're going to choose Kuali data. We're going to select users, and then you'll notice that there's no additional information that's required for this to work. So I'm going to click OK. And it will say it's pulling in my Kuali users area. And one great thing about Build is if I actually click into the form builder on this line, I will be able to check and see that sure enough, it's pulling in my users from the Kuali users area. So I can do a quick check while I'm building the form. Additionally, let's say you're in the middle of building the form, you want to see what this is going to look like for your users. If you come up to the top here and toggle from design to preview, I can see exactly how my form is going to look for my users, and I can test out that field as well. So that is also available to you. I'm going to do a quick toggle back and get me back into my form. Okay, so there's the advisor. Data lookup multi-select, same idea as the data lookup list, except for you would allow users to select multiple things from a list. I'm going to do another data lookup list, and let's say that I want my user to select what the department is. Well, actually, we'll do two. We're going to do two. We're going to say what the current department is that their major is in. So we'll call this current department. I'm going to choose my data source, again, Kuali data, and this time I'm going to say groups, because I want them to choose my department. No additional data is required, so I'm going to click OK. However, I'm not done. I do need to tell the system which category in my groups area I want to pull from. So in this case, sorry, I have to keep moving my chat window from Zoom, but in this case, I want to choose my department's category. So this is going to pull from all of the departments or the groups in my department's category. So we'll say current department. And then let's say I want to do the same thing. I'm going to do a list, but this time I want them to choose the new department that their major is in. Again, choose the data source, Kuali data, groups. And again, make sure you choose the category here as departments. Okay. And again, we can just click into those fields and check, yep, those are my departments. We're good to go. Okay. So what this allows you to do is you pull in users and groups from the users and groups area. It will allow you to use those items in your workflow. So for example, let's say that my user comes in and fills out their advisor and fills out their new department. In the workflow, I can say, okay, you've requested to move to the dance department. I want the new department chair to approve this form. The system will automatically recognize in the workflow whatever the user has selected here, a new department, and will pull in that department's chair to approve that specific form. So if a student says my new department is dance, they'll pull in the dance chair. If a student says my new department is going to be chemistry, it will then pull in the chemistry chair at the appropriate step. So that's some of the added value of being able to use the users and groups area. Okay. I want to show you, I'm going to show you just real quick some integrations that I've set up. As a reminder, this isn't something that you're going to have right now because I did not set up the integrations in your sandbox. It's just in mine. But I want to just give you a tease for Tad's session tomorrow, a little bit of a preview as he gets into smart gadgets a bit more. Let's say that I want some items to automatically populate in this form for my student. Now, it doesn't really make sense for a new major form, what I've got set up, but just go with me what we're talking about. Let's say I want this user's GPA to show up. In this case, I would want to use the data lookup single item. The data lookup single item gadget will allow a field to be pre-populated with data. So it's not a list of things that the user can choose from. It's a read-only field that just pre-populates with stuff. So I'm going to pull this in. I'm going to pull it in right up here under student name, because you're going to see it's going to pull in a little bit of the same information that I've already used, just using a different gadget. And we're going to call this student info. And I'm going to choose my data source. Notice how it only gives me external data as an option. This is not available with the Kuali users. You have to use the list or multi-select for that. External data, I've got my student information API that I've set up. And then notice here that in order to use this integration, I have to have some additional information provided. So here, in order for this to work properly, I need the student ID, which is fine because I added that field to begin with. I'm going to click continue. And then it says, okay, where are you going to get this required information to look up the data? And I'm going to get it from this form. And I'm going to pull in that student ID field. Now, if I want to test that this works, again, I can do it right here in the form builder. And I can just type in that student ID field 1. I've just got some basic students set up. And you'll notice that Jamie Smith is listed as the student associated with that ID. Obviously, it's not my ID. I'd have to have my ID in order for my name to show up, but you get the idea. And then Pat Banks shows up. So that's one of the options. The other thing that I have set up with this particular integration is I also have some linked autofilled gadgets. So if I click this option, you can see I've got some additional information that can be included, like GPA. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in, if I can get it in the right spot. My cursor is not behaving appropriately, but you can see there that I've pulled in the GPA. So it automatically fills in the GPA for Pat Banks. And if I change this to student ID 1, the GPA will change for Jamie Smith. Okay, so that's one option. Another fun integration, I'll just show you one more. I'm going to do a data lookup list. I want to get the students' courses. So I'm going to pull this in and we'll just say current courses. Again, choose source, external data this time. And then I'm going to do my current courses integration. You'll see how it requires a student ID, which again is fine. I've already got that ready to go. And I have to just tell it, where am I getting this information? I'm going to get it from that student ID field. And then I also have some auto-filled gadgets for this as well. And in this case, I want to pull in the course code. Whoops. Let's see if I can get it side by side. My Zoom keeps getting in the way and it's messing up my drag and drop, so I apologize. But okay, so we've got current courses, course code. Once I type in the student ID number, that dropdown will populate. And if I select one of those options, it will give me the course code. Okay, so just some fun things that you can do with integrations. You don't have to do that, but it does add a layer of a nice layer to some of your forms. Okay, so there's our basic forms. Couple of things. I mentioned creating pages in your form. The way that you create a page, if I wanted to create a second page, is I pull in an additional section gadget. So let's say I want to pull in a section here. And let's say that for this section is I want to know the students, let's see, reason for major change. Okay, so the student's reason for major change. And let's say I want to ask them how many times they've requested a major change. I'm going to pull in a multiple choice. Oh, and by the way, before I do that, notice how this section here, there's a little bit of a break between this section and the previous. You can see that white space. If I click on it, it's going to highlight my section. So I know it's a separate section, which I could then also make into another page. Okay, multiple choice. Let's say I'm going to ask them, how many times have they requested a major change? How many times have you requested to change your major? And then I can add some options. I can just say first time, push enter and say 2 to 3 times, or 4 or more times. Now, on this particular field, you'll notice that we have some options because this is a multiple choice. I can select a default option. So notice how my multiple choice options, none of them are selected now. But let's say 90% of the time, first time is what people choose. If I select that as the default option, it will automatically highlight that option for my users. They can still change it if they need to, but I do not need a default. So I can get rid of that. Other things, I can make this field required, and I can do this on most of the fields. Most of these settings carry across multiple fields. I can add a help text or a little help bubble icon. So if I have some additional instructions, I can include that. And if I don't want those additional instructions to appear right below my gadget label or question, I can display inline as a help bubble. So that little question mark, and then I would hover, or the users would hover over it and see my instructions. Limit visibility based on other gadgets. I'm going to come back to that. That's one of the reasons why I did this particular example. Custom column name. We're going to touch more on that tomorrow, so I'll ignore that. And then you can also edit the unique JSON key. And then, of course, you saw me earlier remove a gadget. You can remove a gadget right there. Okay. So basic multiple choice. Let's say that if a user says that they've requested to change their major 4 times or more, I want to know why. I don't care if it's their first time or 2 to 3 times why they've changed their major, but if they've asked to change their major 4 times, I want some additional verbiage about that. So I'm going to pull in this rich text gadget, and I'm going to say, why are you requesting a change? Now, right now, if I click over to preview, that question is going to appear for everyone that fills out the form, which I don't want. I only want it to appear if they answer 4+. So I'm going to go back to that, the field that I want hidden. And this is where the limit visibility based on other gadgets comes into play. This toggle switch allows me to hide this field except for under certain conditions. So I'm going to add a rule that says, okay, if how many times have you requested to change your major is 4 or more, then what we're saying is show this field. So I'm going to double check that. I'm going to go to preview. I'm going to check out my form. How many times have you requested to change your major? And that field's not there. If I select first time, still not there. 2 to 3, still not there. 4+, there it is. We're good to go. Okay. So that's what the limit visibility does. It allows you to hide certain questions or sections as a whole, unless certain conditions are met or certain rules are met. Okay. I don't want to spend too much time on some of these other gadgets, but what I just want to point out a couple of things. If I select a number gadget or a currency gadget, like I said, most of the settings are the same for these gadgets, but some of them, like number or currency, you can have a minimum or a maximum number. So let's say you want a range, like, hey, I need a number in between 5 and 10. You can put that range or whatever it is that you want. Another option is a file upload. The file upload, you can allow them to upload any file type, or you can do some custom file types as well. So just be aware that there's some additional settings on some of these gadgets. For the most part, they're self-explanatory, but if you have any questions, don't forget to go to the help menu and then the knowledge base for those guides. They will get that. Okay. All right. So let's say that our form is done. Our form looks great. Oh, before I move on, questions on forms. Any questions that anyone has? Is there a way to do circular logic? So Emily, what are you able to unmute and tell me what you're looking to do?
Hey, yeah, just wondering if, for example, someone wanted to use the same form to submit multiple submissions, and then is there a way to link them back to the beginning of the form from the bottom of the form?
There is a way, there's a setting that you can turn on that once they've submitted a form, it will allow them to open up a new form and then submit a new form. But it doesn't necessarily go back to the beginning. It would create an entirely separate form. I don't know if that's what you're asking or that's what you're looking to do.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Other questions? How many different fields can be drawn into a progressive disclosure rule? Can there be a nesting A+B or C+D? So what you're saying, Rodney, if I understand, if A is answered, then show B. If B is answered a certain way, then show D, or A+B or C+D. So maybe you can unmute and tell me a little bit more what you're looking to do. Sorry, I've got pictures on one screen. My camera's over here.
Yeah, sorry, I had to find the unmute button. I could have been a little clear with the nesting. Two different questions. So often with our forms, we need a combination of the group selected and then some other field in the form. But there could be other cases where we need to progressively disclose based on a field from one place in the form and another field from some place else in the field. So that was question one. The nesting is about the sophistication of the rules. So I should have said display equals bracket A plus B or bracket C plus D.
It's possible to do some of that. It is a little limited. I don't know, Casey, can you think of a way to do the or option?
So in this case, you're conditionally saying like if this field or this field, render this section potentially.
No, a little bit more than that. So it's this combination or that combination.
So it'd be like a section.
Okay.
Not today.
Okay.
That's pretty complex with what we have today. There's a little bit that you can do, like you can add a rule here and then you can add an additional rule. So if any or all of the following are true, you could do that. But I don't know if that would get you what you need. So there is somewhat where you can do that. You can put stuff in sections and you can have conditional visibility on a whole section, not just a whole field. So you could do that. So it kind of just depends on what you're looking to do.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. We've got about 5 minutes, so I'm going to cruise through just a couple of these last things, and then I'll stay after for a couple of minutes if there's some additional questions. Once you get your form ready to go, typically you're going to jump over into workflow and build your workflow. Like I said, we'll cover this tomorrow. We'll use the same form and cover it tomorrow. We'll pretend for now that workflow is done and then jump into publish. Now, in order for your users to see your form, you need to do 3 things. One is to publish your form. So I'm going to publish it. Yay, hooray, it's saved. The second thing I need to do is I need to share my form. And I can get a shareable link here if I'm sharing anonymously. So I want anonymous users to submit. I need to check that box and share that link. So I need to share the link with the users. And then even still, your users will not have access to the form unless you give them the permission to get access to the form. So we do put a couple of checks in place so you're not just getting your stuff out there until you're absolutely ready. So to give your users permission to the form, you're going to go up to the app name, go to permissions here. Now you'll notice in my form, the only person that can see this is me and probably my system administrators, but it's just me, the person that created it. No one can fill out this form. I have 2 different groups already set up. One is for authenticated users and one is for anonymous users. Authenticated users are if you want users to log into the system, you want all users to have access to this form, you need to give it to them, anonymous users, etc. So let's go through these permissions. Permissions, administer, design, publish the app. That means that they would have the ability to do everything I've just done, create the form, delete the form, etc. Create documents in this app. At the very least, this is the permission that you want users to have. Create a document means they can fill out the form. Read documents in the app means they can view all of the submitted forms. Update documents means they can update, edit, change any submitted document. And delete document means that they can delete any submitted document. So of course, we don't want our authenticated users to do that. We just want them to create a document or fill out a form. So we need to give them that permission. Likewise for the anonymous users, if we want anonymous users to do that, we need to give them the create documents permission. Now, let's say that I have a role that's specific, like I have an assistant who is that how you spell? Yeah, okay. I'm like, is that how you spell assistant? Looked weird for a second. I can create this role and give my assistant specific permissions. So for example, I just want my assistant to have the ability to view all the documents in this app, but that's it. And then I can assign my assistant that particular role. Okay, so in order for your users to see and fill out your form, you need to share it with them. You need to give them the link. And then you also need to give them the appropriate permissions to do that. Once those 3 things have been done, then your users will be able to submit your forms. Okay. I'm going to stay and take questions, but before I do that, I forgot to do this yesterday, so I'm remembering today. Just a reminder, if you are not a Build customer, there is a contest that is ends at the end of this week where you can win a free Build app for, I think it's 2 years. So basically it could be an app that's in production. We help you implement it. You can use the app, see if you like Build. So fill out the form to win a free Build app. And then don't forget to rate these sessions. We really appreciate your comments, your feedback. You'll just go into Socio, click Rate Now at the top of the session screen, okay? As a reminder, tomorrow I will be doing session 2, so we'll be diving into workflow on this particular app tomorrow, so you'll get a better idea of that. GraphQL integration session is the next hour, so that starts at the top of the hour. So if you're technical and want to learn all of the geeky stuff about integrations, that's a great session for you. It is being run by an engineer, so it will be very detailed into integrations. Tomorrow's TAD's Smart Gadgets session, that's going to be also a little bit more technical on how to use smart gadgets, a little bit more on the integration, so I'd recommend coming to that. If there is anything else, if you have any questions, like I said, I'll stick around for probably 5 more minutes. Feel free to jump in and I'll even share my screen if you need it, if you're taking off. Thanks for being here. Y'all are awesome. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you later. Okay, questions. Who has questions? Rachel, would you be willing to review again what situations would be appropriate for data lookup multi-select? Yes. So let's say that a user, like we have an add drop course form. So we want students to be able to add drop their courses. Let's say that they can select, we want them to select 1 course to drop or multiple courses. The multi-select would allow them to select multiple courses to drop or multiple items. Whereas the list would just allow them 1 selection. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Other questions?
So any suggestions as to, so when we deploy this stuff, so somebody creates an app, creates permissions, sends it out, says, hey, use this. Any thoughts as to how we would either provide documentation or provide some kind of guidance as to what this is, who should use it, as opposed to just sending it out and magically people use it, which happens, by the way, but any thoughts as to how we would do that?
Yeah, are you talking about specifically to app administrators or to like someone who needs to fill out a form?
Someone who needs to fill out a form.
What I've seen some of the other schools do is they have been putting all of their documents for, you know, whatever on a web page, like links to the document. Hey, fill out this form if you want to change, if you want to add drop a class, fill out this form if you want to request a major change, fill out this form. And then at the top of that page, I've been seeing some explanation here, like this is where you can find the various forms to fill out this information. Some of them have been putting the instructions in the form itself, like fill out this form to get a new major change request. Here's what happens after the form gets filled out. As you know, Garrett, some of you might not know this, we have a new feature that's going to be released in the next couple of weeks that will show authenticated users their submissions. So we haven't had this yet, but previous submissions that they have sent in and allows them to duplicate and resubmit those submissions. One of the things that we're going to recommend with that is maybe creating a notification step on the workflow that goes directly to the form submitter and says, hey, if you want to check the status of this application, whether it's in progress or complete or denied, go to this link, because that link would be static. It's like something app / my submissions. I think that's what it's going to say. I can't remember what it says, but that's another way that we're going to recommend giving that information out, is providing it in a notification step too.
And in the view my stuff,
Hmm.
it has the same kind of filters as the regular doc thing,
Like the action list or the document list.
the document list. So, you know, as our document lists have grown, the my submissions things will grow over time as well. So
Yes.
I'm assuming it's the same kind of, using the same widget to display the my submissions as the documents.
Not initially. Initially, you'll be able to sort in the columns. I think you can filter somewhat.
Okay.
But eventually, the goal is to have a search feature in the My Documents list for the very reason that you mentioned, like, hey, I filled this form out a year ago and I filled out 100 forms since then. How do I find this particular form from last year? Having some sort of search capabilities won't be released this time, but will be coming.
Okay. So one thing that might be useful in the startup things is to describe how to place stuff on the documents list. Right? How to, because you can configure the documents list for your form.
Mhm.
Right. And then
Yeah.
because that's right. So how you look up your stuff, because you would organize as the app designer how to organize the documents list for your app.
Yes.
So that'd be
So
everything to show.
what do you want me to show that right now?
I mean, if others are interested, otherwise you can put it in your script for later on.
It is in tomorrow's session.
Okay, awesome.
There'll be workflow and then the document list. So those of you who are wondering, like, the document list is what documents have been submitted, where you can see all of that. So tomorrow we're going to review workflow, and then we're going to go into the document list and how you can see submitted documents. So yeah, that's tomorrow's session.
Garrett, thank you very much for purchasing Build for our 10 campuses. Mahalo.
My pleasure. It's been a fun journey.
It has. Okay. If you have any final questions, feel free to reach out to me on Socio, send me an email, come tomorrow. We're going to be starting this GraphQL session here in just less than 10 minutes. So take a quick break and then come join us at the top of the hour. So thanks, everybody.